The alarm hadn't rung yet, but Victoria Sterling's eyes were already open, staring at the ornate ceiling of her Beacon Hill mansion. 5 a.m. Always 5 a.m. Her body had trained itself to wake at this ungodly hour, not because she wanted to, but because sleep had become her enemy. For 4 years now, the same dream haunted her nights, Emma's sweet voice calling Mommy in that lilting tone only a 2-year-old could manage. Then she would wake, and reality would crash down with the weight of absolute silence. Victoria sat up in her king-size bed, the Egyptian cotton sheets pooling around her waist. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Boston was beginning to stir. The historic brownstones of Beacon Hill stood in perfect rows, their red brick facades glowing faintly in the pre-dawn light. Somewhere out there, the city was coming alive with honking horns and rumbling engines. But here in her $15 million fortress, the only sound was her own breathing. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. 73 emails since 11 p.m. last night. The Tokyo merger was heating up, and the Singapore office needed approvals. Sterling Industries never slept, and neither did its CEO. But before diving into the digital chaos that ruled her life, Victoria had a ritual to perform. The same ritual she'd kept every single morning for 4 years. Barefoot, she padded across the Persian rug that had cost more than most people's cars. The hallway stretched before her, lined with priceless art she never had time to appreciate. At the far end, a door remained closed. Emma's door. Victoria pressed her ear against the solid oak, holding her breath. Maybe today, maybe this morning, she would hear her daughter humming to herself, or talking to her stuffed animals, or even just sighing in her sleep. Silence. Always silence. Victoria's hand trembled as she turned the doorknob. The door opened without a sound on well-oiled hinges. Inside, Emma lay curled in her canopy bed, golden hair spread across the pillow like spun silk. The 6-year-old clutched Benjamin, a worn brown teddy bear with a red bow tie. It was the last gift Daniel had given their daughter before boarding that fatal flight to Chicago, the private jet that never made it past Connecticut. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting pale streaks across Emma's angelic face. Even in sleep, the child seemed guarded, her small body curved protectively around the bear. Victoria wanted to go to her to stroke that golden hair and whisper that everything would be okay. But she knew better. Emma would wake, those piercing blue eyes would open, and she would look at her mother with that same expression she'd worn for 4 years. Not anger, not sadness, but something worse. Nothing. A blank slate that Victoria couldn't read or reach. "Stay strong, my little angel," Victoria whispered to the sleeping form. "Today will be different. I believe it will." But even as the words left her lips, she knew she was lying. Today would be like yesterday, and tomorrow would be like today. An endless cycle of silence that no amount of money therapy or desperate motherly love could break. 15 minutes and 12 miles away in a 2-bedroom apartment in Dorchester that had seen better days, Marcus Thompson was performing his own morning ritual. Unlike Victoria's silent vigil, his involved considerably more noise and chaos. "Rise and shine, champion!" Marcus called out, flipping on the light in his son's room. "The sun's up, the birds are singing, and somewhere out there, adventure is waiting for Jaden Thompson." A groan emerged from beneath a pile of Red Sox blankets. "Dad, the sun isn't even up yet. I checked yesterday. It doesn't rise until 6:30. "Ah, but champions rise before the sun," Marcus said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Besides, I made scrambled eggs, and you know they taste better when they're hot." That got movement. Jaden's head emerged, his hair sticking up in every direction. At 11, he was tall for his age, with his mother's deep brown eyes and his father's stubborn chin. "Did you burn them again?" "I'll have you know my eggs are perfectly golden this morning," Marcus said with mock indignation. "I only burn them on Tuesdays." "Dad, it is Tuesday." "Well then, we'd better hurry before they turn to charcoal." They sat together at the small kitchen table, a wobbly piece of furniture Marcus had rescued from a curbside and restored himself. The apartment wasn't much to look at. Water stains decorated the ceiling like abstract art. The linoleum floor had more patches than original material, and the radiator clanged like a ghost with anger management issues. But it was theirs, and it was filled with something no amount of money could buy: laughter. "Dad," Jaden said carefully, pushing his eggs around his plate, Tommy asked me yesterday why you don't work in an office like his dad. He said garbage men are... He trailed off, not wanting to repeat the words. Marcus set down his fork, giving his son his full attention. This was a conversation he'd been expecting, but hoping to avoid for a few more years. What did you tell him? I told him my dad is the strongest man I know. Jaden said, his voice gaining confidence. And that strong people do whatever it takes to take care of their family. Marcus had to turn away for a moment, ostensibly to grab the orange juice from the refrigerator, but really to compose himself. When he turned back, his eyes were just a little too bright. You really think that? Jaden nodded solemnly, then cracked a grin. Plus, I told him your job is way cooler. You get to drive a huge truck, and you know everyone in the neighborhood. His dad just sits at a desk and types all day. That's my boy. Marcus reached across the table to ruffle his son's hair. You know your mom used to say something similar. She said honest work is honest work, whether you're wearing a suit or coveralls. The mention of Rachel brought a moment of quiet to the kitchen. 3 years had passed since cancer had taken her, but her presence still lingered in their lives like morning mist. Jaden had her smile, her way of tilting his head when thinking her stubborn optimism that tomorrow would be better than today. I miss her, Jaden said simply. Me too, buddy. Every single day. Do you think she'd be proud of us? Marcus reached across the table and squeezed his son's hand. I know she would. She'd be proud of you for standing up for your old man, and she'd probably laugh at me for still burning eggs after all these years of practice. That earned a genuine laugh from Jaden, breaking the melancholy spell. They finished breakfast in comfortable companionship, then went through their morning routine with practiced efficiency. Jaden packed his backpack, while Marcus made lunch, 2 sandwiches, an apple, a juice box, and a note that said, "Knock 'em dead today, champ," that he knew Jaden would pretend to be embarrassed by, but would secretly save in his desk. Marcus dropped Jaden at school in his battered Ford pickup that wheezed like an asthmatic runner, but somehow kept going. The radio played classic Motown, and they sang along to the Temptations badly, but with enthusiasm. At the school entrance, Jaden hesitated before getting out. Dad, thanks for being you. Before Marcus could respond, the boy was gone, disappearing into the stream of students. Marcus sat there for a moment, watching his son navigate the crowd with easy confidence. Rachel would indeed be proud. Despite everything they'd lost, everything they'd struggled through, they were making it work. The drive to the Boston Waste Management Depot took 20 minutes through increasingly heavy traffic. Marcus's co-workers were already gathering in the break room, a dingy space that smelled of coffee strong enough to strip paint, and donuts from the shop down the street. Morning, Marcus, Walter called out. At 62, Walter had been working sanitation for 30 years and knew every street, every shortcut, and every resident's trash day schedule by heart. He was also the closest thing to a father figure Marcus had since his own dad passed away 10 years ago. You're looking thoughtful this morning. Just thinking about life, Walter. How quickly things change. Walter poured himself a cup of sludge that passed for coffee and nodded sagely. That they do. Speaking of changes, you hear about the route shuffle? Marcus frowned. What route shuffle? Budget cuts from City Hall. They're laying off 5 guys and redistributing the routes. You and me were safe seniority and all, but we're getting moved to different sectors. Where am I going? Walter consulted a clipboard on the wall. Looks like you got Beacon Hill. Congratulations, you're moving up in the world. Literally. Marcus's stomach dropped. Beacon Hill was where Boston's elite lived. Senators, CEOs, old money families who traced their lineage back to the Mayflower. It was a world he'd only seen from the outside, and he preferred it that way. In Dorchester, people knew him, respected him. In Beacon Hill, he'd be invisible, just another service worker they looked through rather than at. Lucky me, he muttered. Walter clapped him on the shoulder. Could be worse. Could be Southie on St. Patrick's Day. That was true enough. Marcus suited up in his orange uniform, the fabric worn soft from countless washes. His name was embroidered on the chest, though he doubted anyone in Beacon Hill would bother to read it. He performed his safety check on the truck, a ritual he never skipped. Brakes, hydraulic signals. Everything had to be perfect. He had a son to come home to. The drive to Beacon Hill took him through the heart of Boston, past Fenway Park, where he and Jaden caught Red Sox games when they could afford the nosebleed seats, past the Common, where they fed ducks on Sunday afternoons, past the hospital where Rachel had spent her final days. The city was a map of memories, some sweet, some bitter, all precious. Beacon Hill announced itself with a sudden change in architecture. The buildings grew grander, the streets narrower, and cobblestone. Gas lamps, actual gas lamps, lined the sidewalks like something from a Dickens novel. The cars parked along the curbs cost more than Marcus would make in 5 years. Maybe 10. His route sheet directed him to Lewisburg Square first, then down to Mount Vernon Street. He worked methodically, efficiently, the way Walter had taught him. Grab, dump, replace. Don't make eye contact unless spoken to. Don't linger. These people paid their taxes for service, not interaction. It was on his third stop, a massive townhouse on Mount Vernon Street, that he noticed something unusual. The morning sun was hitting the windows just right, and he could see straight into what looked like a home office. A woman sat at a desk, her blonde hair pulled back in a perfect bun, her fingers flying across a laptop keyboard. Even from this distance, he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself like a spring wound too tight. But it wasn't the woman who caught his attention. It was the child standing behind her, visible through another window. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, with golden hair that caught the light like spun gold. She stood perfectly still, just watching her mother work. There was something haunting about her stillness, something that made Marcus's chest tighten with recognition. He'd seen that look before, in Jaden's eyes those first terrible months after Rachel died. Marcus shook his head and got back to work. Not his business, not his problem. He had his own child to worry about. The next morning, Tuesday, started like any other. Marcus was working his way down Mount Vernon Street when he reached the Sterling mansion. He'd learned from Walter that this was Victoria Sterling's house, the youngest female billionaire in Massachusetts. Some tech genius who'd built an empire from nothing. The gossip among the sanitation crews was that she lived alone with her daughter, that the husband had died in some kind of accident, and that the kid hadn't spoken a word since. Poor little rich girl, one of the guys had said. All that money and can't buy a single word from her own kid. Marcus had kept quiet, but privately, he thought there were worse things than a child who wouldn't speak. Like a child with no parent at all. He was wrestling with a particularly heavy bin when he heard a small sound like a bird chirping. Marcus turned, and there she was, the golden-haired girl from yesterday, standing behind the iron gate that separated the mansion from the street. Up close, he could see her features more clearly, delicate as porcelain with eyes the color of a summer sky. She wore a pink dress that probably cost more than his monthly rent, and her hair was braided with mathematical precision. But it was her expression that stopped him cold. Lost. That was the only word for it. She looked lost in a way that had nothing to do with geography and everything to do with the heart. "Hello there, princess," Marcus said gently, setting down the bin. He crouched to her eye level, though the gate still separated them. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" The girl tilted her head, studying him with those impossibly blue eyes. She didn't speak, but she didn't run either. Progress. "I'm Marcus," he said, pointing to the name on his uniform. "I'm the guy who takes away the trash every Tuesday and Friday. Important job, you know. Without me, this whole street would be buried in garbage within a week." Was that a smile, just a tiny quirk of her lips? But Marcus counted it as a victory. The girl pointed at something behind him. Marcus turned to look at his truck, then back at her. "You like the truck? It is pretty cool, isn't it? Want to know a secret?" He lowered his voice conspiratorially. "Sometimes when no one's looking, I pretend it's a spaceship. Captain Marcus of the USS Garbage Collector, exploring strange new driveways, seeking out new trash and new recyclables." This time it was definitely a smile. The girl even made a small sound, not quite a laugh, but close enough. Then her expression changed to one of alarm. She pointed frantically at something near the bins. Marcus turned and saw it, a brown teddy bear caught between 2 trash bags, one button eye staring accusingly at the sky. The bear wore a little red bow tie and looked well-loved, with the kind of wear that came from years of hugs and tears and whispered secrets. "Oh no," Marcus said, immediately understanding. "Is that yours?" The girl nodded frantically, her eyes filling with tears. Marcus didn't hesitate. He carefully extracted the bear from the garbage, shaking off a banana peel that had attached itself to one ear. The bear was a little dirty, but otherwise unharmed. He grabbed a clean rag from his truck and gently wiped it down, treating it with the same care he'd used for something precious. Because clearly to this little girl it was. There we go, he said, holding the bear up for inspection. Good as new. Well, maybe not new, but definitely good. What's his name? The girl's mouth opened, then closed. No sound came out, but Marcus saw her lips form a shape. B something. Benjamin, he guessed, remembering a bear Jaden had when he was younger. The girl's eyes widened in surprise, and she nodded enthusiastically. Benjamin's a good name for a bear, Marcus said. He moved closer to the gate, careful not to seem threatening. You know my son Jaden had a bear too. Still has him, actually, though. He'd die if his friends knew. His bear's name is Captain Courage. Jaden talks to him sometimes, especially when he's sad or scared or missing his mom. The girl's expression changed, becoming intensely focused. She pointed at Marcus, then at herself, then hugged the air where the bear would be. You want Benjamin back? Marcus asked. Of course you do. Here. He carefully pushed the bear through the iron bars of the gate. The girl snatched it up and hugged it fiercely, burying her face in its worn fur. You know what I think? Marcus said softly, watching her clutch the bear. I think Benjamin is more than just a bear. He's a friend, isn't he? Someone who listens without judging, who keeps secrets, who's always there when you need him. The girl looked up at him with those piercing blue eyes, and Marcus saw something shift in them. Recognition, maybe, or hope. I tell Jaden that it's okay to talk to Captain Courage, Marcus continued. Sometimes it's easier to tell our feelings to someone who can't talk back, can't tell us we're wrong or silly or need to buck up. Bears are good listeners. The best, really. The girl pointed at Marcus, then at the bear, then at her chest. Benjamin keeps your words safe, Marcus interpreted. That's his job, huh? To hold all the things you want to say until you're ready to say them. She nodded, a single tear rolling down her cheek. That's a big job for a bear, Marcus said seriously. Benjamin must be very strong, just like you. From somewhere behind the girl came a voice sharp with panic. Emma, Emma, where are you? The girl Emma turned toward the house, but didn't move from her spot by the gate. A woman burst into view, and Marcus recognized her immediately from the newspaper photos. Victoria Sterling looked different in person. Smaller somehow, despite her designer suit and perfect posture. Her face, which appeared coldly beautiful in professional photos, was creased with worry lines. When she saw Emma by the gate, her whole body sagged with relief. Emma, sweetheart, you can't just leave the house without telling Rosa, Victoria said, hurrying toward them. Then she saw Marcus, and her expression hardened into something defensive. Excuse me, can I help you? Marcus stood, slowly aware of how he must look in his stained uniform, talking to her daughter through the gate like some stereotype from a parental nightmare. I was just returning her bear, ma'am. It was in the trash by mistake. Victoria's eyes flew to Emma, who was clutching Benjamin with both arms. She let you give it to her. She was upset about the bear, Marcus said carefully. I just cleaned it off and gave it back. Victoria stared at him, then at Emma, who hadn't moved from her spot. She doesn't interact with strangers. Kids and animals tend to like me, Marcus said with a small smile. Garbage man's superpower, I guess. Victoria's expression was unreadable as she studied him. Marcus could almost see her cataloging details: his age, his appearance, the worn but clean uniform, the name embroidered on the chest. Finally, she seemed to reach some internal decision. Thank you, she said stiffly. For the bear. Emma, come inside now. But Emma didn't move immediately. Instead, she looked at Marcus and did something that made Victoria gasp. She waved. A small, shy wave, but unmistakably deliberate. Marcus waved back. See you Friday, princess. Take good care of Benjamin. Only then did Emma turn and walk back toward the house, her mother's hand hovering protectively near her shoulder, but not quite touching. At the door, Emma turned back once more, and Marcus could have sworn he saw her mouth 2 words, thank you. Victoria Sterling stood at her home office window, laptop abandoned, watching the garbage truck disappear around the corner. In 4 years, she had tried everything. The best child psychologists in Boston and New York and Los Angeles, art therapy, music therapy, play therapy, horse therapy, experimental treatments in Switzerland, traditional remedies from Tibet. She had spent more money than most people saw in a lifetime, trying to unlock the silence that had swallowed her daughter. And in 5 minutes, a garbage man had gotten more response from Emma than all those experts combined. Her phone buzzed with an urgent message from the Tokyo office, but for once Victoria ignored it. Instead, she walked quietly to Emma's playroom, where her daughter sat at a small table, Benjamin propped up in the chair across from her. Emma was moving her hands clearly, having some kind of conversation with the bear, though no words emerged. But there was something different about it. An animation to Emma's movements, a light in her eyes that hadn't been there this morning, or yesterday, or for the past 4 years. Victoria thought about the man Marcus his name tag had said. The gentle way he'd handled the bear like he understood it was more than just a toy. The way he'd crouched to Emma's level, not towering over her, like most adults did. The way he'd talked about his own son naturally without the careful calculation that characterized most people's interactions with Emma. She pulled out her phone not to answer the Tokyo crisis, but to call someone else entirely. James, it's Victoria Sterling. I need you to run a background check on someone. Complete but discreet. His name is Marcus Thompson. He works for Boston Waste Management. Yes, I know it's unusual. Just do it. I want to know everything. Work history, family criminal record, financial status, everything. By tomorrow morning. She ended the call and looked back at Emma, who was now drawing something with crayons. Victoria moved closer, careful not to disturb her daughter's concentration. The drawing showed two stick figures, one small with yellow hair, one tall wearing orange. Between them was a brown blob that must be Benjamin. For the first time in 4 years, Emma had drawn herself with another person. Victoria returned to her office but found herself unable to concentrate on the merger documents. Instead, she found herself thinking about Marcus Thompson's words. Sometimes it's easier to tell our feelings to someone who can't talk back. Is that what she'd been doing wrong all these years? Pushing Emma to talk back, to respond, to be the child she was before Daniel's death? Had she been so focused on fixing the silence that she'd forgotten to listen to it? Her laptop dinged with another urgent message, this one from Richard Blackstone, chairman of Sterling Industries board. Stock price down 3% on rumors about your daughter. Investors concerned about your focus. Need to discuss damage control. Victoria stared at the message, feeling the familiar tightness in her chest. Everything was always about perception, about control, about maintaining the image of perfection that her position demanded. Even Emma's condition had become a corporate liability to be managed rather than a family tragedy to be healed. She typed back, "My daughter is not a damage control issue. Stock will recover. It always does." But even as she sent it, she wondered if she was trying to convince Richard or herself. That evening, as Victoria tucked Emma into bed, her daughter did something unprecedented. She pulled Benjamin from Victoria's hands and made him wave at her mother. Then, with great concentration, Emma moved the bear's arms to point at Victoria, then at the bear, then made a hugging motion. "Benjamin wants to hug me," Victoria asked, her voice thick with unshed tears. Emma nodded, then pushed the bear toward her mother. Victoria took the bear and hugged it gently, inhaling the familiar scent that still after 4 years carried traces of Daniel's cologne. "Thank you, Benjamin," she whispered, then taking a chance. "Thank you, Emma." Emma didn't speak, but she smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes before taking Benjamin back and curling up to sleep. Victoria sat in the darkened room long after Emma's breathing had evened out. Tomorrow Marcus Thompson would receive a very different reception. Tomorrow she would be prepared, would be in control. But tonight, for just this moment, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, the wall of silence that had separated her from her daughter was finally beginning to crack. Wednesday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth for October in Boston. Marcus Thompson stood in his small bathroom, staring at his reflection as he shaved. The familiar routine of preparation felt different somehow, weighted with an anticipation he couldn't quite name. It had been years since he'd felt this way, not since Rachel was alive, and every morning held the promise of her smile. "Dad, you're humming," Jaden observed from the doorway, toothbrush in hand. "You never hum anymore." Marcus hadn't realized he was doing it. The melody was one Rachel used to sing, something about morning sunshine and new beginnings. "Just in a good mood, I guess." "Does it have anything to do with that girl you told me about? The one who doesn't talk?" Marcus paused, razor halfway to his face. He'd mentioned Emma briefly last night, unable to keep the encounter entirely to himself. "What makes you think that?" Jaden shrugged with the wisdom that sometimes possessed 11-year-olds. You had that same look when you talked about mom helping her students, like you found something important to do. The comparison to Rachel hit Marcus unexpectedly. His wife had been a special education teacher before the cancer took hold, working with kids everyone else had written off. She'd come home with stories of breakthrough moments, tiny victories that meant the world. She needs to heal on her own time, Rachel would say. My job is just to make sure she knows someone's waiting on the other side. Maybe, Marcus admitted to his son, that little girl just seems so lost. Reminded me of someone else I know. Jaden's voice was quiet. Marcus set down the razor and turned to face his son fully. Yeah, buddy. Those first months after mom died, you went somewhere I couldn't reach. Scared me more than anything else ever has. But you waited, Jaden said. You just kept making bad jokes and burning eggs until I came back. Still burn them sometimes, Marcus said, pulling his son into a brief hug. And the jokes haven't gotten any better. No, Jaden agreed, his voice muffled against Marcus's chest. They really haven't. They stood there for a moment, father and son sharing the comfortable silence that had become their language of love. Finally, Jaden pulled back. I think you should help her dad, the girl. Mom would want you to. Marcus nodded, throat suddenly tight. Yes, she would. An hour later, Marcus sat in the depot break room, listening to Walter complain about his newest route in Charlestown. All hills and narrow streets. My knees are too old for this nonsense. How's Beacon Hill treating you? It's different, Marcus said carefully. Quieter, cleaner, lonelier. Walter studied him over his coffee cup, one gray eyebrow raised. Lonelier. Since when do you care about being lonely on the job? Not me, the people. You know, in Dorchester, Mrs. Chen always has a bottle of water ready on hot days. Mr. Peterson asks about Jaden's grades. The Hernandez kids draw pictures of the truck. In Beacon Hill, I might as well be invisible. That's the price of money, Walter said sagely. The more you have, the more walls you build. Speaking of which, heard you had some kind of incident yesterday. Supervisor mentioned Victoria Sterling called about you. Marcus's stomach dropped. Called about me? What did she say? Don't know, but Richardson wants to see you before you head out. The walk to the supervisor's office felt longer than usual. Tom Richardson was a decent boss, fair and straightforward, but a call from someone like Victoria Sterling could mean trouble. Marcus knocked on the doorframe. Thompson, come in. Richardson looked up from his desk, his expression unreadable. Got an interesting call yesterday. Victoria Sterling wanted your full name and employee number. Am I in trouble? That's what I thought at first. You know how these rich folks are complain if you breathe too loud near their property. But she didn't sound angry. She sounded curious. You have any idea what that's about? Marcus explained about Emma and the teddy bear, keeping the details minimal. Richardson listened, nodding slowly. Well, whatever you did, keep doing it. Last thing we need is Sterling Industries pulling their commercial contracts because their CEO has a problem with one of our guys. But Marcus, be careful. People like that, they live in a different world. Don't get pulled into something you can't handle. The warning echoed in Marcus's mind as he drove his route. But when he turned onto Mount Vernon Street and saw a small figure waiting behind the gate, all caution evaporated. Emma stood in the same spot as yesterday. Benjamin clutched in her arms, those blue eyes tracking his truck's approach. Marcus parked and walked over slowly, not wanting to startle her. Good morning, Princess Emma. How's Benjamin today? Emma held up the bear and made him wave. Then she did something new. She pointed at Marcus's truck, then at herself, then made a questioning gesture. You want to know about the truck? Marcus asked. Well, it's not pretty, but it's strong. Has to be to carry all that weight. The hydraulics can lift 2,000 pounds. The compactor can squeeze things down to a quarter of their size. But you want to know a secret? Emma nodded eagerly. Sometimes I talk to it, like it's a big grumpy friend. Come on, Bertha. I'll say when it doesn't want to start on cold mornings. We've got work to do. And you know what, it always starts eventually. Just needs a little encouragement. Emma made a sound that might have been a giggle. She pointed at the truck, then made a motion with her hands like she was turning a steering wheel. You want to know what it's like to drive? Marcus glanced around. The street was empty and he could see Victoria watching from an upstairs window. He gave a small wave, hoping she'd understand. Well, it's like being the captain of a ship. You've got all these controls mirrors to watch hydraulics to manage. And the best part, when you're up high like that, you can see everything. The whole world looks different from up there. Emma's eyes shone with interest. She pointed at herself, then at the truck, her expression hopeful. You want to see inside? Marcus hesitated. I don't know if your mom would like that, princess. Tell you what, let me finish this part of my route, and if your mom says it's okay, maybe you can look inside. Deal. Emma nodded solemnly and held Benjamin up to seal the agreement. Marcus went back to work, hyper-aware of the small audience. Every movement became a performance. He demonstrated how the automated arm grabbed the bins, how the compactor worked, even did a silly bow when he successfully navigated around a badly parked BMW. He was just finishing when Victoria appeared at the gate dressed in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than his truck. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Marcus caught something in her eyes. Not suspicion exactly, but a kind of desperate curiosity. Mr. Thompson, she said formally, I wanted to thank you properly for yesterday. No thanks needed, ma'am. Just doing what anyone would do. No, Victoria said quietly, glancing at Emma. Not anyone. Emma, sweetheart, would you go inside and find Rosa? She has your snack ready. Emma looked between them, clearly reluctant to leave. She tugged on her mother's sleeve and pointed at the truck. We'll talk about that later, Victoria said. Go on now. Emma went, but not before waving at Marcus and making Benjamin wave too. Once she was inside, Victoria's composed mask slipped slightly. She drew you, she said abruptly. Last night, this morning. Pages and pages of drawings. A stick figure in orange next to a garbage truck. It's the first time she's drawn any person besides her father in 4 years. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. She's a special kid. She hasn't spoken since the day Daniel died. Victoria continued as if Marcus hadn't spoken. January 15th, 4 years ago. He was flying to Chicago for a conference. I was supposed to go with him, but I canceled at the last minute. A crisis in Tokyo that couldn't wait. He took Emma to the airport to see him off. She was only 2, but she loved watching the planes. The last thing she said was, "Bye-bye, Daddy. Come back soon." The plane went down over Connecticut. Engine failure. The raw pain in Victoria's voice made Marcus's chest ache. He recognized it, that particular flavor of grief mixed with guilt that haunted surviving spouses. She stopped talking that day, Victoria went on. The doctors say it's selective mutism brought on by trauma. Some said she'd grow out of it. Others recommended intensive therapy. We've tried everything. Behavioral therapy, cognitive therapy, play therapy, art therapy, music therapy, medications, alternative treatments. Nothing worked. Most of the time, she won't even acknowledge strangers. But you, I'm not doing anything special, Marcus said honestly. Just talking to her like she's a regular kid. That's exactly what you're doing differently, Victoria said, and for the first time she really looked at him. Not through him or around him, but at him. Everyone else sees her as broken, something to be fixed. Even me, especially me. But you just see Emma. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Jaden's school. Please call immediately regarding your son. I'm sorry I need to take this, Marcus said, anxiety spiking. Victoria nodded and stepped back. The school secretary's voice was professionally calm, which somehow made it worse. Mr. Thompson, there's been an incident. Jaden was in a fight. We need you to come pick him up. A fight? Is he hurt? Some bruising. The nurse has checked him over, but he's been suspended for 2 days. The principal needs to speak with you. Marcus's mind raced. Jaden had never been in a fight, never been in any kind of trouble. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and found Victoria still watching him. I have to go. My son, is everything all right? I don't know. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. He's never done anything like this before. Victoria pulled out her phone. Which school I can call, have my lawyer? No, Marcus said quickly. Thank you, but no. He's my son. I'll handle it. He saw a flash of something in Victoria's eyes. Hurt understanding. Of course. I hope everything's okay. Marcus nodded and headed for his truck, then paused. Tell Emma I'm sorry I had to leave. Tell her Benjamin asked me to say goodbye. The drive to Dorchester Middle School was a blur of worst-case scenarios. Marcus found Jaden sitting in the principal's office, a purple bruise forming around his left eye, his knuckles scraped raw. He looked small and defiant and scared all at once. You want to tell me what happened? Marcus asked, crouching in front of his son. Jaden's eyes filled with tears he was fighting not to shed. Tommy and Derek were saying stuff. What kind of stuff? About you. About us. They said we were trash, just like what you pick up. Said Mom would be ashamed seeing what we'd become. Marcus felt rage bloom in his chest, hot and dangerous. He wanted to find these kids' parents wanted to shake them until they understood the damage their casual cruelty caused. Instead, he pulled Jaden into his arms. Your mother would be proud of you, he said firmly. Every single day she would be proud. You know that, right? I tried to walk away, Jaden mumbled against his shoulder. Like you taught me. But when Derek said you probably killed Mom with your garbage germs, I couldn't. Shh, it's okay. It's okay. The principal, Mrs. Patterson, cleared her throat. Mr. Thompson, while I understand Jaden was provoked, we have a zero-tolerance policy on fighting. 2 days suspension, and he'll need to write a letter of apology to both boys. They should be apologizing to him, Marcus said, standing up. They've been suspended as well, Mrs. Patterson said. But that doesn't excuse Jaden's actions. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to point out the difference between defending your family's honor and attacking someone's livelihood. But he knew it wouldn't matter. Rules were rules, and people like him didn't get to challenge them. We'll take the suspension, he said quietly. Come on, Jay. Let's go home. They drove in silence for a while, Jaden staring out the window, Marcus trying to figure out what to say. Finally, Jaden spoke. I'm not sorry. I know. I'd do it again. I know that too. Are you mad? Marcus pulled into their apartment building's parking lot and turned off the engine. I'm proud of you for standing up for our family. I'm sad that you felt you had to, and I'm worried about what this anger might turn into if we're not careful. Mom would have said violence is never the answer, Jaden said quietly. She would have, but she also would have understood why you did it. She was human, Jay. She got angry too, especially when people hurt the ones she loved. That evening, while Jaden iced his eye and worked on homework, Marcus sat at their small kitchen table and did something he hadn't done in years. He wrote a letter. Dear Emma. He began, then crossed it out. Too formal. He tried again. Hi, Princess Benjamin. Probably told you I had to leave quickly today. My son Jaden needed me. He's having a tough time, kind of like you sometimes. But you know what? Even when things are tough, there's always tomorrow. And tomorrow, if you want, I'll tell you more about Bertha the truck. Maybe Benjamin would like to hear about the time Bertha and I rescued a whole family of raccoons. It's a funny story. Your friend Marcus. P.S. Jaden says hi. He'd like to meet Benjamin someday. He folded the letter carefully and put it in his pocket. He'd figure out how to deliver it tomorrow. Meanwhile, across the city in Beacon Hill, Victoria Sterling was facing her own battle. The conference call with the board had been going for 2 hours, and Richard Blackstone's voice through the speaker was growing increasingly frustrated. The photos are everywhere, Victoria. Sterling heiress befriends garbage man. The optics are terrible. The optics? Victoria's voice was dangerously calm. My daughter smiled, Richard. She interacted with another human being for the first time in 4 years, and you're concerned about optics. I'm concerned about a 3% stock drop in 2 days, Richard shot back. Investors are questioning your judgment. They're wondering if your personal situation is affecting your professional capacity. My personal situation has never affected my performance. Really, because I'm looking at your travel schedule, and you've declined 3 international trips in the last month. The Tokyo team says you're increasingly unavailable during their business hours. The Singapore expansion is behind schedule because you insist on being home for dinner. Victoria closed her eyes, feeling the familiar pull between two worlds that both demanded everything. The company is still profitable. We're up 18% year over year. We could be up 25% if you were fully focused, Richard said. Victoria, I like you. I've always supported you, but the board is asking hard questions, and I need answers. What is your relationship with this man? He's a city employee who was kind to my daughter. That's all. Then why did you run a background check on him? Victoria's eyes snapped open. How did you? Very little happens in this city that I don't know about, especially when it involves Sterling Industries' CEO. James Sullivan is discreet but not invisible. So I'll ask again, what is your relationship with Marcus Thompson? There is no relationship, Victoria said firmly. He made Emma smile. That's worth more to me than any stock price. Careful, Victoria. Emotional decisions are bad for business, and heartless decisions are bad for families. I won't apologize for putting my daughter first. There was a long pause. Then Richard's voice softer, but somehow more threatening. The board meets next Tuesday. I suggest you have a better answer by then. The line went dead. Victoria sat in her home office staring at the darkened screen of her laptop. Through the window, she could see Emma in her playroom carefully arranging her stuffed animals in a circle around Benjamin, who sat in the place of honor. She was moving her hands animatedly, clearly, telling them all a story, though no words emerged. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from Helen Morrison, Emma's psychiatrist. Saw the news articles. We should discuss this development. Concerned about Emma forming unhealthy attachments. Unhealthy attachments. Is that what this was? A traumatized child finding comfort in a kind stranger's attention? Or was it something else? Something the experts couldn't quantify in their clinical terms. Victoria thought about Marcus's face when he'd gotten that call about his son. The immediate panic, the fierce protectiveness, the way he'd refused her offer of help. He was proud, probably too proud, but there was something genuine about him that she hadn't encountered in years. In her world, everyone wanted something. Marcus Thompson seemed to want nothing except to make a little girl smile. She pulled up the background report James had compiled. Marcus Anthony Thompson, 35 years old. Born in Roxbury, raised in Dorchester. Bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from UMass Boston. Graduated with honors. Worked for Boston Engineering Group for 6 years before his wife's diagnosis. Rachel Thompson, elementary school teacher, died 3 years ago from pancreatic cancer. Medical bills had decimated their savings, forced them to sell their house. Marcus had taken the sanitation job for the steady paycheck and health insurance. No criminal record, no debts beyond the mortgage on a modest apartment. Member of the local community center, coached youth basketball until his wife got sick. On paper, he was exactly what he appeared to be: a good man, dealt a bad hand doing his best to raise his son alone. But paper didn't explain why Emma responded to him, why this particular person had broken through 4 years of silence when renowned experts had failed. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Rosa stood in the doorway, Emma beside her. Senora Victoria, Emma insists on showing you something. Emma held up a piece of paper, a new drawing. This one showed 3 figures, a small one with yellow hair, a medium one with brown hair, and a tall one in orange. They were all holding hands standing next to a simplified garbage truck. At the top, in shaky but deliberate letters, Emma had written, FRENDS. Victoria's eyes burned with sudden tears. Friends? You want to be friends with Marcus and his son? Emma nodded vigorously, then pointed at the drawing at her mother and made an inclusive gesture. You want me to be friends with them too? Another nod, this one accompanied by the ghost of a smile. Victoria pulled her daughter into her lap, something Emma usually resisted, but tonight allowed. It's complicated, sweetheart. Adults make things complicated. Emma pulled back and looked at her mother with those penetrating blue eyes. She pointed at the drawing again, specifically at the held hands, then put her small hand over her mother's heart. The gesture was so simple, so pure, that Victoria felt something crack inside her chest. When had she stopped believing in simple connections? When had everything become about leverage and angles and protecting yourself from inevitable betrayal? You're right, she whispered to her daughter. Sometimes friends are just friends. Emma curled into her mother's embrace, and for a moment Victoria let herself imagine a world where that could be true, where a garbage man and a billionaire could be friends, where their children could play together without the weight of social expectations, where healing didn't require credentials or expensive treatments, but just the willingness to see and be seen. Her phone buzzed with another urgent message from Tokyo, then another from Singapore, then 3 from various board members. Victoria looked at the screen, then at her daughter, then made a decision that would have been unthinkable a week ago. She turned the phone off. How about we have ice cream for dinner? She asked Emma. Just this once. We can eat it in the playroom and you can tell Benjamin all about your new friends. Emma's smile was answer enough. The next morning, Thursday, dawned gray and drizzly, matching Marcus's mood. Jaden was still suspended, and leaving him alone in the apartment felt wrong, but Mrs. Rodriguez next door had agreed to check on him, and Marcus couldn't afford to miss work. He'd almost finished his Beacon Hill route when he saw them 5 men with expensive cameras clustered around the Sterling Mansion gate. Paparazzi. They turned as his truck approached, and suddenly Marcus understood that his life was about to change in ways he hadn't anticipated. "That's him," one shouted, and they swarmed toward the truck cameras, clicking like angry insects. Marcus Thompson, what's your relationship with Victoria Sterling? How long have you been seeing her daughter? Are you being paid to be there? Is this some kind of therapy?" Marcus kept his head down, focusing on his work, but they followed him shouting questions, taking photos of him emptying bins like it was some kind of scandal. He caught a glimpse of Emma in an upstairs window, Rose's arms around her, the little girl's face crumpled with confusion and fear. That's when Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He stopped, turned to face the cameras, and spoke clearly and firmly. "I'm a city employee doing my job. That little girl is a child who deserves privacy and respect. You should be ashamed of yourselves harassing a family for profit. Now get out of my way before I call the police." "So you admit you have a relationship with the family?" one reporter pressed. "I have a relationship with every family on my route," Marcus said. "It's called being a decent human being. Try it sometime." He went back to his truck, ignoring their continued shouts, but inside his heart was pounding. As he drove away, he saw Victoria standing at the gate watching him leave. Their eyes met for just a moment, and in that glance was a whole conversation. Gratitude, worry, and something else, something that made Marcus's chest tight with possibility and fear in equal measure. His phone rang as soon as he was around the corner. Walter's voice was grim. "Marcus, you need to come back to the depot, now." "What's wrong?" "Just come back, and Marcus, maybe, update your resume." The drive back felt like heading to an execution. Marcus knew how this worked. When important people were unhappy, unimportant people paid the price. And in the grand scheme of Boston's power structure, he was about as unimportant as they came. Tom Richardson was waiting in his office, his expression unreadable. "Sit down, Marcus." Marcus sat. "I've had 3 calls in the last hour. One from the mayor's office, one from Sterling Industries, and one from the Waste Management Union rep. You want to guess what they were about? The photographers at the Sterling place. The photographers, the news stories, the social media storm. Marcus, you're a good worker, one of my best. But this situation is becoming a distraction we can't afford." "Are you firing me?" Richardson sighed. "I should be. The mayor's office strongly suggested it, but Victoria Sterling herself called and said if we fired you, Sterling Industries would pull every single commercial contract they have with the city. That's $40 million annually." Marcus blinked, stunned. "She said that." "She did, which puts me in an impossible position. I can't fire you without losing our biggest contract, but I can't have photographers following my trucks around either. So here's what's going to happen. You're being transferred to night shift effective Monday. Same pay, same benefits, but you'll be working commercial routes only. 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. No residential areas, no Beacon Hill, no Sterling Mansion." It was both better and worse than Marcus had expected. He'd keep his job, but night shift meant barely seeing Jaden. It meant his son coming home to an empty apartment after school, eating dinner alone, doing homework without help. "I understand," Marcus said quietly. "Do you?" Richardson leaned forward. "Marcus, I don't know what's going on with you and that family, and frankly, I don't want to know. But be careful. People like Victoria Sterling don't live in our world. When this ends, and it will end, you'll be the one left picking up the pieces." Marcus nodded and stood to leave, then paused. "Tom, what if it doesn't end? What if this is actually something good?" Richardson's expression softened slightly. "Then I hope you're prepared for what that means. Because good things that cross those kinds of lines, they come with a price. Always." As Marcus drove home, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He pulled over to read it. "Mr. Thompson, this is Victoria Sterling. I'm deeply sorry about this morning. The photographers have been dealt with. I've also been informed about your shift change. This is unacceptable. Please come to the house this evening at 7. We need to discuss how to move forward. Emma has been asking for you all day. She won't understand if you disappear. Please, VS. Marcus stared at the text, his thumb hovering over the reply button. Every instinct told him to politely decline to take the night shift and fade back into invisibility where he belonged. It would be safer, simpler, better for everyone. But then he thought about Emma's face in the window, frightened and confused. He thought about the drawings Victoria had described, the careful letters spelling out friends. He thought about Jaden saying his mother would want him to help. He typed back, I'll be there. Because sometimes the right thing to do wasn't the safe thing. And sometimes walls between worlds were meant to be crossed, even if you had to pay the price for crossing them. As he drove home to check on Jaden, Marcus didn't notice the sedan that had been following him since he left the depot. Inside, a private investigator hired by Richard Blackstone made notes and took photos, documenting every move. Because in the world of billionaires and boardrooms, information was power, and power was everything. The rain had started in earnest, now turning the streets of Boston into rivers of reflected light. Somewhere in Beacon Hill, a little girl waited by a window clutching a teddy bear and watching for an orange truck that wouldn't come. Somewhere in a boardroom, powerful people made plans to protect their interests. And somewhere in between, two single parents were about to discover that the walls between their worlds were both stronger and more fragile than either of them had imagined. 7 o'clock approached with the weight of inevitability. Marcus stood in his apartment bathroom, staring at his reflection in the medicine cabinet mirror. He'd showered, shaved, and put on his best shirt, a blue button-down Rachel had bought him for their last anniversary. It still smelled faintly of her perfume, or maybe that was just his imagination playing tricks. You look nervous, Jaden observed from the doorway, his black eye now a spectacular purple and yellow. Like first date nervous. It's not a date, Marcus said quickly. It's a meeting. About Emma. Right, a meeting. That's why you changed shirts 3 times. Marcus turned to face his son. You sure you're okay with me going? Mrs. Rodriguez said you could stay at her place until I get back. Dad, I'm 11, not 5. I can handle a couple hours alone. Jaden's expression grew serious. Besides, that little girl needs help, and maybe her mom does too. What makes you say that? Jaden shrugged. Rich people problems are still problems. Money doesn't fix everything. Mom taught us that. Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought. He pulled his son into a quick hug. When did you get so wise? Tuesday around lunchtime, Jaden deadpanned. Now go, and Dad, just be yourself. That's what they need. The drive to Beacon Hill took 20 minutes through evening traffic. Marcus parked his pickup 2 blocks away, not wanting to draw attention. The rain had stopped, leaving the cobblestones gleaming under the gas lamps. The Sterling mansion looked different at night, warmer somehow, its windows glowing golden against the dark sky. Marcus pressed the gate buzzer, his heart hammering. Instead of the electronic voice he expected, he heard Victoria herself. Marcus, come in. Gates open. The gate swung inward silently, and Marcus walked up the curved driveway, feeling like he was crossing into another world. The front door opened before he could knock. Victoria stood there, and for a moment Marcus forgot how to breathe. She'd traded her power suit for jeans and a simple cream sweater. Her hair was loose, falling past her shoulders in waves. Without the armor of professional attire, she looked younger, softer, and somehow sadder. Thank you for coming, she said, and her voice held none of its usual sharp edges. Emma's been at the window all day. She was devastated when your truck didn't come. I'm sorry, the photographers were my fault. I should have anticipated this. Please come in. Marcus followed her through a foyer that was bigger than his entire apartment. The walls were covered with what looked like expensive art, but the spaces in between held children's drawings in simple frames. Emma's work, he realized, given the same importance as masterpieces. Emma's in the playroom, Victoria said, leading him up a curved staircase. She doesn't know you're here yet. I wanted to talk first, if that's okay. She led him to a study that looked like something from a movie. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk that probably cost more than his truck, and a view of the Boston skyline that took his breath away. But Marcus noticed other things too. A coffee cup with lipstick stains sitting cold on the desk, a blanket thrown carelessly over a chair, children's books mixed in with business journals. "Can I get you something to drink?" Victoria asked. "Coffee. Something stronger." "God knows I need something stronger." "Water's fine," Marcus said. She poured water for him and wine for herself, her hands trembling slightly. They stood awkwardly for a moment before Victoria gestured to a leather couch. "Please sit. This is strange, I know. All of this is strange. You know." Marcus sat on the edge of the couch, hyper-aware of everything. His work boots on the Persian rug, his calloused hands against the soft leather. The way Victoria tucked her legs under herself in the chair across from him, making herself smaller. "Tell me about your son," she said unexpectedly. "Jaden." Emma drew him in her pictures. "He's 11, smart, too smart sometimes. Loves science and basketball. Misses his mom every day but doesn't let it break him. He's basically the best kid in the world and I have no idea how I got so lucky." Victoria's smile was wistful. "He sounds wonderful. I heard he was in a fight. Is he okay? Some kids said things about our family. He defended us. Got suspended for it. That's ridiculous. He was standing up for his father." "Rules are rules," Marcus said with a shrug. "That's how it works for people like us." "People like you." Victoria's voice had an edge. "What does that mean?" "Come on," Marcus said gently. "You know what it means. You live up here in Beacon Hill with your millions and your mansion. I live in Dorchester in a two-bedroom apartment with water stains on the ceiling. You make more in a day than I make in a year. We're not the same kind of people." "You're right," Victoria said, surprising him. "We're not the same. You know how to make your child happy. I don't." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "Do you know what I was doing when Daniel died, closing a deal? $100 million acquisition that I just had to oversee personally. I told him to take the trip without me. Told him Emma would love to see the planes. I prioritized a deal over my family, and the universe punished me for it." "That's not how it works," Marcus said. "Bad things happen. It's not punishment. It's just life." "Is that what you told yourself when Rachel died?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "No. I blame myself for a long time. If I'd caught it earlier, if I'd had better insurance, if I'd taken her to different doctors. The what-ifs will eat you alive if you let them." "How did you stop Jaden? He needed me present, not drowning in what might have been. Emma needs the same from you." Victoria turned to face him. "She needs you too. I don't understand it, but she does. These past 3 days, she's shown more life than she has in 4 years. She's been drawing constantly. She even hummed a little tune this morning. She was humming Marcus." "That's wonderful." "It is. But I'm losing you to night shift because of my world interfering with yours. And that's not acceptable." Victoria returned to her chair, leaning forward intently. "I have a proposition." Marcus tensed. Here it came. The offer of money, the attempt to buy what couldn't be bought. "I want to hire you as Emma's companion. 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'll pay you triple what you make now. You can quit the sanitation job, work your own hours, be there for Jaden." "No." The word hung between them like a slap. Victoria blinked. "You haven't even heard the full offer." "I don't need to. Emma doesn't need an employee. She needs a friend. The minute you put a price on that, it becomes something else. Something less. Then what do you suggest? You're being moved to night shift. Emma won't understand why you disappeared." "I'll figure something out. Visit on my days off, maybe." "That's not enough." Victoria's voice cracked slightly. "You don't understand. She waited by the window for 8 hours today. 8 hours, Marcus. When Rosa tried to move her for lunch, she had her first meltdown in 2 years. She needs consistency. She needs to know you're coming back." Marcus ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "What do you want from me, Victoria? I can't lose my job. I have a son to support. I have bills to pay. I can't just rearrange my life because a little girl likes me." "Why not?" Victoria stood pacing now. "Why is it so impossible? Because of pride? Because you don't want to take money from me? Because I know how this ends?" Marcus stood too, his voice rising. "You think I'm some miracle worker, but I'm not. I'm just a guy who was nice to your daughter. Eventually you'll realize that. Or Emma will get better and won't need me anymore. Or the board will pressure you to cut ties. And then where will I be? No job, no stability, just another fool who thought he could cross into your world." My world, Victoria's eyes flashed. You think I chose this world? You think I wanted to raise my daughter alone in a museum of a house while vultures circle waiting for me to fail? You think I like that my 6-year-old daughter's mental health is considered a stock liability? They stood facing each other, both breathing hard, the air between them electric with tension, and something else, something neither wanted to name. A small sound from the doorway broke the spell. Emma stood there in pajamas covered with tiny unicorns Benjamin clutched to her chest. Her eyes were wide, moving between the two adults with obvious distress. "Hey, princess," Marcus said softly, crouching down. "I'm sorry we were loud. We were just talking about grown-up stuff." Emma walked slowly toward him, then past him to her mother. She tugged on Victoria's hand until her mother knelt too, then positioned them so they were facing each other. With great concentration, she took Marcus's hand and placed it in Victoria's, then covered both with her small ones. "Friends," she whispered. The word was barely audible, raspy from disuse, but it was there. Real. Spoken. Victoria gasped, tears flowing freely. "Emma, baby, you spoke." Emma nodded solemnly, then looked at Marcus. "Marcus, stay." 2 words, but they rearranged the entire world. Marcus felt his own eyes burning as he squeezed the small hand holding his. "Yeah, princess, I'll stay." "How?" Victoria asked, her hand still in his, all of them connected by a 6-year-old's determination. Marcus thought about Jaden's words about being yourself, about Rachel's belief that helping others was never wrong, even when it was hard. "We'll figure it out, together." Emma smiled, then bright and real, and for a moment the three of them stayed there, kneeling on the expensive rug, hands clasped, bound by something stronger than social classes or board meetings or public opinion. The moment was broken by Marcus's phone buzzing. Jaden texting, "You okay? Mrs. Rodriguez is making me eat her tuna casserole. Please come save me." Marcus laughed, showing the text to Victoria, who smiled. "Bring him next time," she said. "Emma wants to meet him properly." "Next time," Marcus agreed, and the words felt like a promise. They spent the next hour in the playroom, Emma showing Marcus her drawings, her books, her collection of stuffed animals who all had names and elaborate backstories that she communicated through gestures and the occasional whispered word. Victoria watched from the doorway, seeing her daughter bloom like a flower in sunshine. When it was time for Emma to go to bed, she insisted Marcus read her a story. He chose Where the Wild Things Are, using different voices for each character, while Emma giggled and Victoria recorded it on her phone, wanting to capture this moment of pure joy. As Emma drifted off to sleep, Benjamin held tight. She whispered one more word, "happy." Victoria and Marcus stepped into the hallway, both emotionally drained. "I should go," Marcus said. "Jaden's probably suffering through dessert by now." "Marcus, wait." Victoria touched his arm the first time they touched without Emma's intervention. "I need to tell you something. Richard Blackstone, the chairman of my board, he's going to try to make this difficult. He sees you as a threat to the company image. He might come after you. Let him come. I've faced worse than some suit with a god complex. No, you don't understand. Richard doesn't fight fair. He'll dig into your past, your finances, anything he can use. He might even try to affect your job, your son's school." Marcus's jaw tightened. "He can try, but I'm not abandoning Emma because some rich guy throws a tantrum. You barely know us. Why would you risk so much?" Marcus thought about it, really thought about it. "My wife used to say that sometimes you don't choose to help someone. Sometimes helping chooses you. It just shows up at your door, or in this case at your gate, and you either answer the call or spend the rest of your life wondering what if." Victoria's eyes searched his. "Your wife sounds like she was amazing." "She was. She would have liked you, I think. Would have said you need a friend as much as Emma does." "Do I?" Victoria's voice was small. "Need a friend? Don't we all?" They stood there in the soft light of the hallway, two single parents carrying grief and responsibility, and now maybe hope. The moment stretched between them, fragile and full of possibility. "Sunday," Victoria said finally. "Can you come Sunday? Bring Jaden. We'll have lunch. Emma can show him her playroom. We can talk about how to make this work." "Sunday," Marcus agreed. As he walked back to his truck, Marcus didn't notice the car parked across the street or the long lens camera capturing his exit. but Victoria did, watching from the window. She pulled out her phone and made a call. James, it's Victoria. I need you to do something for me. Find out everything Richard Blackstone is planning. And James, this time don't be discreet. Let him know I'm watching. Let him know I'm ready for war if that's what he wants. She hung up and looked back at Emma's room. Her daughter had spoken. 3 words, but they were everything. And Victoria would burn down the whole world before she let anyone take that progress away. Saturday passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus spent the morning cleaning the apartment, while Jaden peppered him with questions about the next day's lunch. Victoria spent it in conference calls with her legal team, building defensive strategies against whatever Richard might attempt. That evening, as Marcus was helping Jaden with homework, his phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Thompson, this is Richard Blackstone. I believe we should meet. Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. I don't think we have anything to discuss. On the contrary, I have a proposition that could benefit us both. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., the Ritz-Carlton lobby. Come alone. The line went dead. Marcus stared at the phone, unease crawling up his spine. Dad! Jaden looked up from his math homework. You okay? Yeah, buddy. Just some adult stuff to handle. But as Marcus lay in bed that night, staring at the water-stained ceiling, he wondered what price he was about to pay for crossing into Victoria Sterling's world, and whether when the bill came due he'd be able to afford it. Sunday morning arrived gray and humid, the air thick with the promise of afternoon thunderstorms. Marcus dropped Jaden at Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment with instructions to be ready by noon, then drove to the Ritz-Carlton, a hotel he'd only ever seen from the outside. Richard Blackstone was waiting in the lobby, a man in his 60s with silver hair and eyes like winter. He didn't offer to shake hands. Coffee? Richard asked, gesturing to the hotel restaurant. I'm fine standing. Richard smiled thinly. Straight to business, then. I've done my research on you, Mr. Thompson. Decorated veteran degree in mechanical engineering, excellent work history until your wife's illness. Clean record, responsible father. On paper, you're admirable. But you're also proud, stubborn, and in way over your head. Victoria Sterling is not just some single mother who needs a friend. She's the CEO of a billion-dollar company responsible to shareholders, board members, and thousands of employees. Her image is part of our corporate value. Her daughter's happiness should matter more than corporate value. Spoken like someone who's never had to make payroll for 5,000 people. Richard pulled out an envelope. Inside is a check for $100,000. Take it, walk away, and everyone wins. Marcus didn't touch the envelope. Everyone except Emma. The girl has access to the best care money can buy. She doesn't need you. The best care couldn't get her to speak. I did. Richard's eyes narrowed. Yes, quite the miracle. Some might even say suspicious. A random garbage man succeeds where specialists failed. People might wonder what your real motives are. My motives are simple. A little girl needed kindness. I gave it. Nothing is ever that simple, Mr. Thompson, especially not when billions of dollars are involved. Richard stood. The offer stands until noon today. After that, I'll be forced to protect Sterling Industries' interests in other ways. Is that a threat? It's a reality. Your son attends Dorchester Middle School on a partial scholarship, doesn't he? Scholarships can be revoked. Your apartment is rent-controlled, but building ownership can change. Your employer has city contracts that are up for renewal. Should I continue? Marcus stood too, his hands clenched. You'd hurt a child to get to me. I'd protect a corporation that employs thousands of families. It's simple math. One family's discomfort against thousands of livelihoods. You're a real piece of work. I'm a realist, Mr. Thompson. The question is, are you? Marcus walked out without another word, his mind racing. By the time he picked up Jaden, he'd made his decision. Richard Blackstone could do his worst. Marcus wouldn't abandon Emma for any amount of money or threats. The lunch at Victoria's started awkwardly, with Jaden clearly overwhelmed by the mansion and Emma hiding behind her mother. But Marcus had an idea. Hey, Jaden, why don't you show Emma that magic trick you've been practicing? Jaden brightened. The one with the quarter. That's the one. Jaden pulled a quarter from his pocket and performed a simple vanishing trick he'd learned from YouTube. Emma's eyes widened with delight, and she clapped silently. Want to learn how? Jaden asked. Emma nodded eagerly, and just like that, the ice was broken. As the children played, Marcus told Victoria about Richard's offer and threats. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. That son of a... I'm so sorry, Marcus. I'll handle Richard. He could hurt Jaden. His scholarship, our apartment. No, he won't. Victoria's voice was steel. Richard overplayed his hand. Threatening a child, I can destroy him for that. Victoria, no, listen to me. I've been playing nice, trying to balance everything, keeping everyone happy. But if Richard wants a war, he'll get one. And I don't lose. Before Marcus could respond, a crash came from the playroom. They rushed in to find Jaden and Emma standing over a broken vase, both looking terrified. It was an accident, Jaden said quickly. We were playing catch and... It's just a vase, Victoria said, but Marcus could see her tense. Actually, Emma said clearly, it was ugly. Everyone froze. Emma had spoken a complete sentence. She looked as surprised as anyone, then added, Sorry, Mommy, but it was. Victoria burst out laughing, pulling Emma into a hug. You're right, sweetheart. It was hideous. Your grandmother gave it to us, and I've hated it for years. The tension broke all of them laughing. Marcus helped clean up the broken pieces while Victoria ordered pizza, declaring formal lunch canceled in favor of picnic in the playroom. As they ate, Emma began talking more. Not fluently, still with pauses and whispers, but real conversation. She asked Jaden about school, about basketball, about his favorite subjects. Jaden, bless him, answered patiently, never making her feel self-conscious about her hesitant speech. Your dad, Emma said to Jaden, makes me brave. He does that, Jaden agreed. Mom used to say he was like a lighthouse, steady and bright when everything else is dark. Marcus had to excuse himself, stepping onto the balcony to compose himself. Victoria followed. He's wonderful, she said, watching the children through the glass door. You've raised an amazing son. Rachel raised him. I'm just trying not to screw up her good work. Stop that. Victoria's voice was firm. Stop diminishing yourself. You're a good father, a good man. Own it. They stood close on the balcony, the city spread below them. Marcus could smell her perfume, something expensive but subtle. Victoria turned to face him. I talked to my lawyers this morning. I'm restructuring my position at Sterling Industries, stepping back from day-to-day operations, focusing on strategic planning. It means fewer hours, more flexibility. I'm choosing Emma over the company. That's a big decision. It's the only decision. These past few days have shown me what I was missing, what we were both missing. She paused. I also did something else. I created a position at Sterling Industries, Community Outreach Director focusing on education initiatives for underserved communities. It requires someone with engineering background, teaching experience, and deep community connections. Marcus stared at her. Victoria, the salary is $90,000 to start, full benefits, flexible hours to accommodate being a single parent. The position reports directly to me outside of Richard's influence. You can't just create a job for me. I didn't. I created a job we need filled. You happen to be qualified. There's a difference. People will talk. People are already talking. At least this way you'd have protection. Richard can't threaten a Sterling Industries director the way he can threaten a sanitation worker. Marcus thought about it. The salary would change everything for him and Jaden. The hours would let him be present for his son, and the work helping kids like Jaden, who had potential but not opportunity, it was something Rachel would have loved. I need to think about it, he said. Of course. But Marcus, Richard was wrong about one thing. Your motives might be simple, but the situation isn't. Emma needs you. We need you in our lives. The question is whether you're willing to let us in yours. Before he could answer, Emma appeared in the doorway. Marcus, Jaden taught me basketball. Watch. She demonstrated a clumsy dribble, the ball bouncing wildly, her face glowing with pride. Marcus caught the ball, then lifted her up so she could reach the toy hoop mounted on the playroom wall. She dunked it with a shriek of joy. She's finding her voice, Victoria said softly. She always had one, Marcus replied, setting Emma down. She just needed to know someone was listening. That evening, as they prepared to leave, Emma did something unexpected. She hugged Jaden, then Marcus, then whispered, Don't go forever. Never, princess, Marcus promised. We're friends now. Remember, friends don't disappear. As they drove home, Jaden was quiet. Finally, he said, Dad, I think you should take the job. Yeah, why's that? Because mom would want you to, because it's good for us, and because that little girl looks at you like you're a superhero. You can't let down someone who thinks you're a superhero. Marcus reached over and squeezed his son's shoulder. When did you get so wise? Must be all that tuna casserole. Brain food. They laughed, but Marcus's mind was racing. By the time they reached their apartment, he'd decided. He pulled out his phone and texted Victoria, "I'll take the job, but I keep working with Walter 1 day a week. Can't abandon my routes completely." Her response was immediate. "Deal. Welcome to Sterling Industries, Director Thompson." Then a second text. "Emma says goodnight to Marcus and Jaden. She's writing you both letters. Actual letters. She's writing." Marcus showed the text to Jaden, who grinned. "Looks like you're officially a superhero now, Dad." The next morning, Monday, Marcus gave his 2 weeks' notice at Boston Waste Management. Tom Richardson seemed relieved and concerned in equal measure. "You sure about this, Marcus? These corporate jobs, they're not permanent. When they're done with you, then I'll deal with it. But right now, a little girl needs me to show up. So I'm showing up." Walter was more direct. "You falling for her? The mother? It's not like that. Boy, I've got eyes. It's exactly like that. Just be careful. Hearts break easier than bones, and they take longer to heal." But Marcus wasn't thinking about his heart as he prepared for his first day at Sterling Industries. He was thinking about Emma's smile, Jaden's future, the possibility of building something new from the broken pieces of two families. He didn't know that Richard Blackstone was meeting with 3 board members building a case for Victoria's removal. He didn't know that photographers were staking out Jaden's school waiting for a story. He didn't know that in 6 months, Emma would speak at a charity gala, bringing a room full of billionaires to tears with her story of finding her voice. All he knew was that Tuesday morning, when he knocked on the Sterling Mansion door, wearing a suit that Victoria had sent over, Emma opened it herself and said clearly, "Marcus is here. Marcus is home." And for the first time in 3 years, that word felt right. Home. Not a place, but people who chose each other, despite the odds, despite the differences, despite the walls the world tried to build between them. Victoria appeared behind Emma, professional in her business attire, but with a warmth in her eyes that made Marcus's chest tight. "Ready for your first day, Director Thompson?" "Ready as I'll ever be, CEO Sterling." Emma looked between them and giggled a sound like music. "Mommy and Marcus are friends," she announced to no one in particular. "Yes, sweetheart," Victoria said, her eyes not leaving Marcus's face. "We are." And as the 3 of them walked to Victoria's car, Emma chattering about showing Marcus her new drawings, none of them noticed Walter's garbage truck turning the corner. The old man watched them, smiled to himself, and muttered, "Good for you, Marcus. Rachel would be proud." The truck rumbled on, picking up the pieces of the lives people discarded, while behind it 2 broken families began the slow, careful work of building something whole. 6 months later, the Sterling Foundation's first annual gala for childhood trauma and recovery was held at the Boston Public Library. Emma stood at the podium, Benjamin the bear beside her, and spoke for 12 minutes about silence, about friendship, about the garbage man who taught her that broken things could still be beautiful. "My daddy went to heaven," she said, her voice clear and strong. "And I stopped talking because I was scared if I said goodbye to anyone else, they might go to heaven too. But Marcus taught me something important. He said love doesn't disappear when people go. It just changes shape. My daddy's love became Benjamin. My mommy's love became patience. And Marcus's love became the bridge that brought my voice back." In the audience, Marcus stood between Victoria and Jaden, tears streaming down his face. Victoria's hand found his, squeezing gently. "Some people think Marcus saved me," Emma continued. "But that's not true. We saved each other. Marcus and Jaden needed a family. Mommy and I needed friends. And sometimes that's how the best families are made. Not from perfect pieces, but from broken ones that choose to fit together anyway." The room erupted in applause. Richard Blackstone, sitting in the back, stood and walked out. He'd submit his resignation the next morning, beaten not by corporate maneuvering, but by a 6-year-old girl's truth. Later, as the gala wound down, Marcus found himself on the library's balcony, looking out at the city lights. Victoria joined him, still in her elegant gown but looking tired. "We did it," she said. "The foundation is fully funded for 5 years. We can help so many children." "Emma did it," Marcus corrected. "We just gave her the stage." Victoria turned to face him. Marcus, there's something I need to say. These past 6 months you've been amazing. With Emma, with the foundation, with everything. But I need to know, what are we? Marcus was quiet for a moment. We're two people who found each other at the worst possible time in the best possible way. We're friends. We're partners. We're a family. Victoria's voice was hopeful. Yeah, Marcus said softly. A family. If you want that. I want that. Emma wants that. The question is, what do you want? Marcus thought about the past 6 months, the late nights working on foundation proposals, the Sunday dinners that had become tradition, the way Jaden had started calling Victoria Aunt Vic, and how Emma had started signing her drawings, Emma Thompson Sterling, the way his heart raced when Victoria smiled at him over morning coffee. I want to stop pretending this is just about the kids, he said. I want to stop being careful. I want. Victoria kissed him soft and sure, tasting of champagne and possibility. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. Took you long enough, she murmured. I'm a slow learner, Marcus admitted, but I get there eventually. They stood together on the balcony, two people who had lost everything and found each other in the ruins. Below them, Boston sprawled in all its contrasts, rich and poor, old and new, broken and beautiful. Marcus, Victoria said quietly, Emma asked me something yesterday. She wanted to know if you and Jaden could move in with us. Marcus's heart stopped. What did you tell her? I told her that was a question for all of us to answer together, as a family. And what's your answer? Victoria smiled the smile that had become his favorite sight in the world. My answer is that I love you, Marcus Thompson. I love your son. I love the way you make my daughter laugh and the way you make me remember who I am beneath all the corporate armor. My answer is yes, if you'll have us. Marcus thought about his small apartment with its water stains and creaking floors. He thought about the Sterling mansion with its empty rooms waiting to be filled with laughter. He thought about Rachel and what she would say. Family isn't about the house, she'd tell him. It's about the people who make it home. Yes, he said. My answer is yes. From inside the gala, they heard Emma's voice clear and bright. Marcus, Mommy, come see Jaden's teaching me a new magic trick. They walked back inside hand in hand toward the sound of their children's laughter. The photographer from the Globe captured the moment Victoria Sterling, billionaire CEO, and Marcus Thompson, former garbage man, turned foundation director, surrounded by their children, all of them glowing with the kind of happiness that couldn't be bought or sold or traded on any stock exchange. The headline the next morning would read, From silence to song, the family that rebuilt itself. But for Marcus and Victoria, the only words that mattered were the ones Emma whispered as they tucked her in that night, Benjamin the bear firmly in her arms. We're home, all of us. We're finally home. And they were.